Karma is a concept in many Eastern religions, including Hinduism and Buddhism, that refers to the belief that a person's actions in this life will determine their fate in future lives. It is often described as a system of cause and effect, where good actions lead to a good future, and bad actions lead to a bad future. The idea is that someone's actions in this life will influence their circumstances in future lives, and ultimately determine whether they will achieve enlightenment, or be reborn in a higher or lower state of existence. Reincarnation is the belief that the soul or spirit of a person continues to exist after death, and is reborn into a new body. The concept of reincarnation holds that the soul is on a journey of growth and evolution, and that each lifetime is an opportunity for the soul to learn and progress. Some believe that the soul chooses its own path and circumstances in each lifetime, while others believe that the soul is guided by a higher power or destiny. The belief in reincarnation is often accompanied by the belief in karma, which holds that actions in one lifetime will have consequences in future lives. The concept of reincarnation hinges on the idea of an eternal soul or life force that continues into another life after biological death. Although this is a central idea to many religions, some non-religious people find the philosophical concept of reincarnation attractive and choose to prescribe to its belief. Reincarnation is nothing but the belief that the spirit survives the death of the body, to return after a period in another body. Also, today's human beings have been on Earth many times before, and will return many times, until each soul decides that it no longer needs to reincarnate. If we look carefully in all the records of antiquity, we notice that the idea of reincarnation appears in all ancient civilizations: Egyptian, Ghetto-Dacian, Greek, Amerindian, Celtic, Saxon, Viking, and even Jewish. Reincarnation is something that the human being must overcome. The purpose of the soul is to free itself from the need to reincarnate. Although, in some exceptional cases, reincarnation is a choice, most of the time it is a necessity, in which case the benefits of reincarnation can prove to be a too good offer for the soul to refuse. In ancient Greece it was said, the soul enters this life not as a new creation, but only after a long period of previous existence on this earth, or elsewhere, starting on the path of its future transformations that it is now preparing for. Socrates also supported reincarnation. The living ones only give birth to the dead ones, which means that newborns are souls that return to the world as a result of reincarnation after their death. Plato, in all his works, supported the idea of successive lives. He claimed that the soul never dies, but that it leaves life, then re-enters, but is never destroyed. Herodotus, the father of history, said about the ancient Egyptians that they were the first to affirm that the soul is immortal. The Greek philosopher Pythagoras, who lived 5 centuries before Jesus, not only spoke on this subject, but his disciples referred in writing to his personal memories of various reincarnations. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the famous German poet, said, "I am certain that I have been here as I am now 1,000 times before, and I hope to return 1,000 times." The great philosophers of the Renaissance also referred to reincarnation, among them Leonardo da Vinci and Giordano Bruno, who demonstrated in a philosophical manner the possibility of an infinite universe, populated by an infinite number of worlds identical to ours. In our words, let's call it multiverse. Giordano Bruno also stated, "The forms descend from the one to the many by means of an analogical series of similitudes. There is an order and connection in all things such that inferior bodies follow intermediate bodies, and intermediate bodies follow superior bodies." For his words, Giordano Bruno was sentenced to be burned at the stake to death by the Roman Inquisition for his heretical ideas, which he refused to recant. The famous industrialist Henry Ford believed in the idea of reincarnation, and stated in an interview that appeared in the San Francisco Examiner on August 26, 1928, "I adopted the theory of reincarnation when I was 26. Religion offered nothing to the point. Even work could not give me complete satisfaction. Work is futile if we cannot utilize the experience we collect in one life in the next. When I discovered reincarnation, it was as if I had found a universal plan. I realized that there was a chance to work out my ideas. Time was no longer limited. I was no longer a slave to the hands of the clock. Genius is experience. Some seem to think that it is a gift or talent, but it is the fruit of long experience in many lives. Some are older souls than others, and so they know more. The discovery of reincarnation put my mind at ease. If you preserve a record of this conversation, write it so that it puts men's minds at ease. I would like to communicate to others the calmness that the long view of life gives to us. The list of important personalities who were convinced that they lived multiple lives did not stop here. Many other personalities expressed their belief in reincarnation, although they did not come from places where their religion accepted reincarnation. To shed more light, we will present some interpretations of passages from the Bible, made by specialists, proving that Jesus himself knew and accepted reincarnation. These are among the few passages that escaped from the hands of the evildoers. Attention, no one is forced to believe what is in this content. These are opinions collected from many corners of the world. However, reading the Gospels, we will not find the word reincarnation anywhere. It is not surprising that it was not mentioned anywhere explicitly, in an era when everyone believed in it. The evangelists had no way of anticipating that an era would follow in which people would no longer believe in it. Even so, there are clearer evidences. After 6 days Jesus took with him Peter, James and John the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. The disciples asked him, "Why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. In the same way the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. Matthew 17:1, 10-13. As you can see, in very clear language, Jesus identified John the Baptist as the reincarnation of Elijah. Even the disciples of Jesus understood what Jesus was saying. Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. As you well know, the Bible is made up of the Old and the New Testament. Between these two writings, there were 400 years of silence in which it is said that God would have prepared the world for the appearance of John the Baptist as the forerunner of Jesus. But, in the Old Testament we have the prophecy or the promise that a certain Elijah, certainly not John, will come to announce the coming of the Messiah on earth, as we see written. "Now I am sending to you Elijah the prophet, before the day of the Lord comes, the great and terrible day." Malachi 3:23. The New Testament begins with the introduction of John the Baptist. As it is written in Isaiah the prophet, "I will send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way, a voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight paths for him." And so John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness, preaching a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. Mark 1:2-4. If the Old Testament promises us that a certain Elijah will return to announce the coming of the Messiah, and the New Testament begins exactly with the announcement of the introduction of John the Baptist, who is this Elijah? Isn't it John the Baptist? In the Gospel of John, we have some additional information about John the Baptist, which is equally interesting. The verse from the Gospel according to John 1:6 tells us that John existed up in heaven in the same way that the Bible mentions that Jesus existed. That is, he was sent by God. But it's as if Jesus Christ was the only one sent by God, and the rest were cast out of heaven. How could this Elijah also be sent of God, just like Jesus? There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. John 1:6-7. Notice how it clearly says that John the Baptist was sent by God, which means that his soul came from heaven before he was born. And now, let's hear a longer passage from the mouth of Jesus, which I ask you to read very carefully. When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." As John's disciples were leaving, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. "What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No, those who wear fine clothes are in kings' palaces. Then what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, 'I will send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you.' Truly I tell you, Among those born of women there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist, yet whoever is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been subjected to violence, and violent people have been raiding it. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And if you are willing to accept it, he is the Elijah who is to come. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Matthew 11:3-15. As you can see, we hear from the mouth of Jesus the words he is Elijah. If John was not Elijah, then Jesus was not the Messiah. I have not seen a greater confirmation than this. And they will go to others and say, I have sinned, I have perverted what is right, but I did not get what I deserved. God has delivered me from going down to the pit, and I shall live to enjoy the light of life. God does all these things to a person, twice, even 3 times, to turn them back from the pit, that the light of life may shine on them. Job 33:30. Here's one verse that talks about reincarnation, saying that God does this to man twice, 3 times, to raise him from the pit, to illuminate him with the light of the living. That is, he incarnates it twice, 3 times, until he chooses goodness, until he becomes enlightened and until he passes from darkness to light. That's what it's about. In the version in which reincarnation would be possible, the souls would accumulate karma. According to the definition of karma, no action remains without result, without consequence, and the respective action can have consequences both in this life or in the next life. What we are experiencing now is what karma wants us to experience, depending on what we have done. Every feeling, every thought, are the consequences of your past actions that help you learn your lessons. Our actions create our future. They create a reward. Karma is the invisible force that teaches us. Whatever you send out into the universe always comes back to you. Karma can also be found in the following proverbs: what you sow, that's what you reap, or, what you give, that's what you get. In the Bible, karma is presented as follows: good karma, also called dharma. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Matthew 5:7. Or if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. Matthew 6:14. And bad karma. Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6:7. Then Jesus said to him, put your sword back into its place. For all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Matthew 26:52. Do you remember how John the Baptist died? Wasn't his head cut off with a sword? Exactly. What does Jesus say? Put your sword back into its place. For all who take the sword will perish by the sword. But let's look now in Elijah's life and see what he did to be beheaded. When he was reincarnated later in the person of John the Baptist, Elijah lived during the time of King Ahab, the king who had married Jezebel, the king's daughter of Sidon, and because of her, he worshipped at a god called Baal. Elijah went to King Ahab to reproach him for worshipping the wrong god, telling him, in these years there will be neither dew nor rain, only when I say so. What happened to him? And thus Elijah proved that his God is the true one. Thus, 450 priests who worshipped the god named Baal were led to the vicinity of a pond and beheaded. This is how Elijah received his reward when he came back to earth as John the Baptist. Jesus knew who he was, and what awaited him. But he did nothing to save him because divine justice must take its course. Everything that man calls luck or bad luck, is nothing but the effect of the laws of the universe, which have the role of guiding us towards evolution. The man who does not recognize these things, has the impression that life has something against him, that life is painful and always has the feeling that he is being chased by destiny. While the man who knows the laws and the purpose of life on earth and cooperates intelligently, acts as he should and thus has a much quieter life because he strives. It is logical that the one who is asleep should be shaken often, to bring him to the path chosen by the soul. This evolution takes place with the help of the law of karma or the law of cause and effect. In nature, there is no idea of reward or punishment, but only of cause and effect. As they say, what you sow, you reap. You cannot sow dry and diseased seeds and expect a huge and rich plant to grow. This law says simply, the man who thinks well, speaks well or does good deeds, receives good in return. While the man who thinks badly, and does bad deeds, gets bad in return. But attention! Not as reward or punishment, administered by some omnipotent being or deity, but simply as a result of his actions. If we do not understand this divine law of karma that extends over several lives, we will never understand why certain things happen in life, and we will think that we are being punished and we will get angry at God. Have you ever thought why there are so many differences between people? Why are others born poor, and others rich? Why are some born strong and others weak? Haven't you wondered why God is so unfair? Without considering reincarnation, this inequality and apparent injustice between people could lead a person to conclude that God is extremely unfair. But in the version in which we take reincarnation into account, these things would make a lot of sense. Father Origen was recognized as the most learned and the most original thinker among the Christian fathers. Origen wrote that God did not create each man based on favoritism, but gave souls bodies according to each one's sin. Origen asked, if souls did not pre-exist before birth, how do we explain the fact that we meet people blind from birth, without having committed any sin, while others are born without any problems? It is clear that certain sins existed, were committed, before the soul came into bodies and, as a result of these sins, each soul receives the reward directly proportional to what it deserves. If it is said that God is just, and human beings have free will, the freedom to choose what they do, how could God let some people be born with disabilities? It is more than clear that what you get in this life is based on your previous actions. Don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. Everyone has to go through certain lessons and learn them. Your soul is everything that means love, kindness, happiness, light, purity, and so on. Everything in your life happens for a reason, and absolutely nothing is accidental. When you look through the eyes of the soul, all the negative experiences you've had are actually beneficial things, not bad luck at all. Everything is an evolving stage of the soul, and if you saw things like this, if you changed the angle from which you look at things, everything would make sense. You will understand the reason why you went through each trial. You will face life's challenges brilliantly, and last but not least, you will get what you want much faster. The soul, by its nature, is immortal, and its only purpose is evolution, being the reason why you are here on earth. The evolved and awakened human being who knows the truth about himself manifests courage, trust, forgiveness, understanding, love, gratitude, generosity, gentleness, patience, compassion, happiness, tranquility, peace, and so on. To understand better, we present you a representation called the Pyramid of Consciousness. The Pyramid of Consciousness is a concept developed by philosopher and spiritual teacher, David Hawkins. It represents different levels of human consciousness, with the highest levels being the most enlightened, and the lowest being the most primitive. The pyramid has 7 levels, with the highest level being enlightenment and the lowest being shame. Each level represents a different state of consciousness and a corresponding level of personal power and awareness. The concept is based on the idea that as individuals progress through the levels, they become more self-aware and able to access higher levels of consciousness. The final point is, you have to overcome the lowest threshold, which is envy, hatred, guilt, shame, fear, and the like. You must understand that all these are actually of our lower nature and only keep us separated from each other, and that all these only keep us in place and do not help us evolve. If we are at a low level of consciousness, as you saw in the Pyramid of Consciousness, it means that it does not let God manifest through us. It is as if we have the wire cut at the extension cord, and we cannot charge at the outlet being the great source of energy that each of us calls differently, God, universe, creator. It means the same thing, the word is different. We are all His sons. We are co-creators. Thank you for watching. Let me know in comments, do you believe in karma and reincarnation? If you are enjoying my content, press subscribe button for more. And don't forget, thumbs up. See you soon.